Okay, so again, we want to welcome Beth Fateni here. She's going to enlighten us on how we can reduce toxins and live a greener life. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any comments or questions during the presentation, you can put them in the chat box. I will monitor that throughout. And a happy Earth Day to everyone. So I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, Beth.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for everybody being here. It's really great to do a presentation like this on Earth Day. So I hope everybody learns a lot. And let me just pull up my slides. And what I always say about this presentation is that it's like a menu because we're going to cover a lot of different topics. And I usually lay out, here's the problem and then here's the solution. So sometimes by the end, people can be slightly overwhelmed. So I invite you to just, like I said, look at it as a menu and everybody can do a little bit of something and we do everything that we can and look at it as steps. But just by means of introduction of myself, I'm the director of Green Inside and Out. We're a nonprofit organization in Huntington, but we cover all of Long Island. And for many years, I've been working on the issues of toxins reduction and pesticides and all these things that we'll talk about today. We do a radio show on WUSB Stony Brook you can listen into on Friday evenings at 6 p.m. And I'll have my contact information at the end. But again, just really happy to be here on Earth Day to talk about ways we can reduce toxins. So some of the subjects we'll talk about, as I mentioned, are pesticides, cleaning products, plastics, and then cosmetics and body care products, and sort of some of the related issues within those. So why do we even need to be concerned about the issue of toxins? Well, since the 1940s, over 80,000 synthetic chemicals have been introduced into the market. And as you can see, very few of them have been adequately tested for association with chronic diseases such as cancer, hormone disruption or endocrine disruption, birth defects, neurological diseases. And this is from Dr. Phil Landrigan. He's a renowned pediatric doctor that's worked on environmental health for years with the Children's Environmental Health Centers in New York City. So one of the questions that often comes up is it just our genes or are there actually factors in the environment that are causing more illnesses? Well, I've worked with many breast cancer groups here on Long Island. And what we talk about is that the latest statistic is that only about 10 to 15% of all breast cancer incidences are due to genetic heritage alone. There was actually a study in the early 2000s that looked at both women and men that had the BRAC or BRAC2 gene that makes you more prone to develop the cancer as a disease. And what they found was that the people who were born before 1940 were at less risk than those born after 1940 when we started using a lot of the industrial chemicals that we're using today. Rising slightly since the 1970s. And we also see that girls are reaching puberty earlier. So several different reasons why we should be concerned about the use of chemicals in our environment. So something to be aware of is that children are uniquely susceptible to the toxic effects of chemicals, especially with pesticides, for example. Children crawl on the floor, especially young babies. They put things in their mouths. They might pet the dog that just rolled in the grass outside. And also their livers and kidneys, that would normally be detoxifying the body as an adult are not fully developed yet. So they're not able to detoxify the way an adult's body can. And then pesticides and other chemicals last longer in their bodies and they have their whole life ahead of them. So it does more damage in the long run. So we'll start off with pesticides. There are a few different ways that we can be exposed to them, unfortunately. And I point out that the part of the word side comes from Latin. It means to kill. We're intentionally adding these chemicals to our environment to kill living things. Pesticides include insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides. So pesticides are particularly toxic to bees, especially the neonicotinoids, fish, and other aquatic life, birds. There are about 7 million birds killed by lawn care pesticides alone in the United States. That was a study done by a Cornell University professor, actually, who said it's closer to 70 million birds that are killed by agricultural chemicals when you include farms. And the health effects of pesticides for humans is that there's a large body of evidence that has linked certain pesticides with breast and other cancers, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Several years ago, there was a World Health Organization report that came out talking about the very common pesticide called Roundup, saying that it may be linked to cancer. Certain pesticides are suspected of disrupting the body's hormone system by mimicking or blocking our natural hormones in our bodies. And we need our hormones to be healthy because, functioning in a healthy way because they help to control our organs. So these chemicals have a, long-term effect. Some pesticides, especially insecticides like chlorpyrifos, can damage the nervous system and affect IQ. They're even relating some pesticides with Parkinson's disease and autism. There's still a lot of more study that needs to be done. But the good news is that there are alternatives to pesticides. So there's the organic approach when it comes to our lawns. We'll start off with that first. There is the soil food web right under our feet. In the soil, there are fungi, nematodes, bacteria, arthropods, and one eats the other. So, and even earthworms, they're very good for aerating the soil. And as one eats the other and basically poops it out, that is a natural, healthy cycle in the soil. So what organic maintenance does is it encourages this. It establishes that healthy soil ecology, which provides the lawn with its own natural defenses. So there are several steps to an organic lawn. It doesn't mean just doing nothing, but it means, for example, mowing the grass a little bit higher, because believe it or not, there are weed seeds basically everywhere, ubiquitous in the environment. So mowing the grass shades out the weed seeds. It just doesn't let the sun hit the weed seeds, and it helps the grass to compete. You can also do more grass seeding, of course. Seed is pretty cheap, it's not expensive. You can promote the soil life that we talked about by using compost. You can make your own compost, or you can even buy it. There's plenty of companies making compost here, even on Long Island. Maintaining a neutral soil pH is important because here on Long Island, we tend to have acidic soil. So adding some lime is occasionally is a good idea. And then if we still find that we have some pests, there are least toxic pest control products, such as potassium salts of fatty acids. If you look at the ingredients when you go to the nursery, there are several products that have that, which are good against weeds. Garlic and neem, hot pepper, these tend to repel insects. And there's a few other things that you can ask for when you go to the nursery. It's just a matter of being aware as consumers and to ask for these products. So compost, just going back to that, it's a very important subject. It contains beneficial microorganisms and also the organic material that those organisms feed on. So it's a really great addition to your soil to make it healthy and organic. And you can see there's Long Island Compost is a local company. So I thought I would put this in as well because right now this issue of food waste is becoming more in the public awareness. Each year, Americans waste about 33 million tons of food. So you can see there my little metal canister that's in my kitchen. I take the food scraps that I have and put it in my compost bin there, the big black thing, and turn it, and I get compost that I can use for my ornamentals. So around the edge of the yard or even for the garden, you just don't want to put any animal bones or anything in there that would attract vermin, but plant scraps are great. and it's cheap. This way I save money on fertilizer. So these are some of the alternatives we were talking about in terms of pesticides. You can find sulfur fungicides. Sometimes that may be needed on roses, for example. Corn gluten down on the bottom is a protein from corn that stops weed seeds from growing. You want to put that down early in the spring, like around now, actually, this time of year. Milky spore kills grubs. Ladybugs are naturally, natural predators that eat up the bad insects. So some really great alternatives. Garlic juice is also effective against ticks. So if you have dogs, I know one of my listeners there has a couple of dogs. It's good for ticks. So just talking about some non-toxic indoor pest control quickly as well. The main strategy with reducing pests on the inside of the house is to use prevention. So it's called integrated pest management, where you basically, remove the food and water that is attracting these pests, getting rid of clutter, removing any cardboard boxes because cockroaches tend to like cardboard, the glue on cardboard boxes actually, making the environment inaccessible to pests, closing up the cracks and sealing, or putting door sweeps rather along the bottom of the door so that insects don't come into the house. And if you do those things, you'll find that that controls quite a bit, because even if you take out a can of Raid and spray, around where you see ants, once the chemical wears off, which is going into your breathing space, they'll be coming back in if you don't seal up the cracks. But there are also some least toxic non-chemical pesticides that you can use as a last resort. So boric acid is an effective treatment for ants and roaches. Carpenter ants are very common around here. They tend to live in decayed and wet wood, so you want to make sure to keep the house structure sound and dry. But realize that ants are beneficial when they're living outdoors, so they're not a threat. They're just sort of annoying. The small ants, we mean. But one thing I want to point out about this slide too is that you can find boric acid and other pesticides as baits. And I always recommend that rather than anything that you spray into the air, because you don't want to be inhaling any kind of chemical. It's always better when it's contained. Interestingly enough, mint oil has been found to be effective against killing wasps and yellow jackets. We never want to kill honeybees. I'm sure many people are aware we're having issues with maintaining the populations of honeybees, so we want to protect them. But when it's something that will bite us or our children, we can find, these alternatives like mint oils. And there's also traps like you see in the picture there, especially for around schools. Those are a good alternative. And there's that company that's actually called Poison Free, Victor. There's another company called Safer, just like it sounds, SAFER, that you can find online. Really great companies. So another way that we're exposed to pesticides is through our food, unfortunately. So there's a great solution to that, which is to choose organic whenever possible. It's not always possible, but there's more and more organic food that you can find in regular grocery stores, certainly at farmers markets and at health food stores. So what does organic mean? I still get this question quite a bit. Organic food means that it's been approved by the US Department of Agriculture and it must meet federal guidelines. It has to be certified by a third-party certifier who is accredited by the USDA. So when you see that label, it really does mean something. There's an inch-thick set of regulations that these farmers have to abide by. But when you see the words all natural, those are the kind of words that really have no legal meaning. It doesn't really mean anything, basically. So again, organic means that no synthetic pesticides or fertilizers are used and no genetically modified ingredients. And that's a whole subject for another lecture. But another thing we can do just to reduce our overall environmental impact from our food is to choose local. It just reduces the energy used in transport. And in terms of our health, to avoid charbroiled food that really black, like on the grill, that black stuff, because it can contain polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, which are carcinogens. And I know I'm going over quite a bit, so we'll take questions at the end, by the way. So feel free to put anything in the chat and we'll try and get to it. But another way to lower our impact from food overall is to eat lower on the food chain, meaning more plant-based foods. The Food and Agriculture Organization has concluded that meat and dairy production is about 18% of global greenhouse gases. And of course, I think many of us know that in today's factory farming, the animals are fed with growth hormones and antibiotics. So we want to avoid those things, consuming those things. And even fish. There's a new documentary out called Seaspiracy, if anyone has heard about that, about overfishing. But in terms of the health, fish can contain mercury, PCBs, which are from our electrical systems, polychlorinated biphenyls, which are carcinogens. And also now we have to worry about microplastics. What's happening is with polyester, which is made from plastic, when we wash it in the washer, sometimes small pieces break off and they end up going into our waterways. So another place that we may be exposed to pesticides is actually through our fabrics. So we'll talk a bit about bedding and clothing. There's not just pesticides in our clothing, but all kinds of chemicals. I won't go through all of these. Actually, a few weeks ago, the library was kind enough to have me speak on eco-fashion as well. So we went through all these, but there are flame retardants, formaldehyde used to make fabric wrinkle-free. There are dyes, sometimes heavy metals used. So lots of things to be aware of there in terms of our fabrics. And like I said, polyester is made of plastic. And in fact, it's manufactured using antimony, which is a carcinogen and also a toxin, as you can see there. So what's the alternative here? What we can do is seek out organic cotton and natural fibers as much as possible, because cotton is one of the most intensively sprayed field crops in the world, accounting for more than 10% of the world's pesticide use. They say it takes about a quarter pound of pesticides just to make a cotton t-shirt, for example. So what's exciting is that more and more we're seeing eco-fashion, organic clothing. You can find hemp clothing. You can even find organic cotton sheets and towels, mattresses, pillows. All of this, can be ordered online, which has a carbon footprint, granted. But even now in some of the big box stores, we're seeing more of these options, which is really great. This is just a picture of baby clothes, just as a reminder, because if we're shopping for baby clothes, always great to look for organic options. And that's my book down in the corner called The Green Wardrobe Guide, if you want to read more about it. So another thing that we have to be aware of in terms of toxins in our daily environment is flame retardants. So there are these chemicals called PBDEs, polybrominated diethers. They're added to foam cushions, any kind of upholstered furniture, textiles such as curtains. They're even used in baby cribs and changing pads, anything that contains that polyurethane foam. Studies find these flame retardants linked to impaired memory and learning in behavioral issues in laboratory animals. And what we can do, though, what's great is that in the case of furniture is we can look for natural or organic cotton mattresses. I actually even have an organic cotton futon in my house. And what they do is they use wool and borate, which are naturally flame retardant, and those are used as these chemicals alternatives to, in terms of making the product flame resistant. So lots of stuff on pesticides and other chemicals. So we'll move on to cleaning products. So it might seem strange that something that we use in our house to clean our house can actually also bring toxins into the house. But unfortunately, that's the case. Most cleaners and especially laundry detergents are petroleum based. So they may contain phenols, which are these organic compounds that are caustic to the respiratory system. Sometimes they even contain heavy metals and phthalates. So I want to introduce this subject of phthalates, which are also in fabrics. But phthalates are what make the scent in something last longer. So it's always kind of incredible to me when I see these ads on television saying, oh, I washed this with such and such product a month ago and it still smells good. Well, that's because of these chemicals. And unfortunately, these phthalates are hormone disruptors. So we're definitely being exposed to them quite a bit from all these cleaners that we use on a regular basis. Some of the fumes from cleaners can induce asthma in otherwise healthy individuals. And maybe some of you have heard about this other chemical of great concern here on Long Island called 1,4-dioxane. It's found in many detergents and in dish soaps. And so several years ago, environmental groups got together in large force and we called for some regulation of this 1,4-dioxane because it was being found in high levels in Long Island drinking water. So now there's a new law that starting in 2022, there can be no more than 2 parts per million in these personal care and cleaning products. So the other good thing is that when it comes to cleaners is that many non-toxic ready-made cleaners are available at health food stores. So you can just go to the store and buy them, or you can make your own, which is even cheaper. So you can make your own cleaners from using baking soda and vinegar, very easy. You can use a little lemon to make it smell nice. And this is one way that going green can actually be cheaper. A lot of times I hear people say, well, doesn't going green cost more? Well, this is a place where we can save money by making our own cleaners. And these are just a few examples that you might see on store shelves. Seventh generation, they've been around for a while, many different companies. I don't just, advocate any certain one, but now they're being found in regular grocery stores and especially, of course, at health food stores. And Trader Joe's tends to be very good. So I meant to mention that as well. When it comes to looking for organic food, I know it can be a little more expensive. So Trader Joe's is a good place to find affordable organic food and some of these greener products. So of course, because we're in the middle of this pandemic, hopefully things will be opening up soon, but I wanted to mention disinfection. I get a lot of questions about this, and Green Inside and Out actually made a little video. You can go on our website and watch the video as to how to make your own hand sanitizer. But I just wanted to point out that, these disinfecting wipes that we see around from Lysol and Clorox can contain this chemical called alkyl dimethyl benzyl ammonium chloride, which is a mouthful. But it's also a chemical related to these systemic, organ effects, respiratory effects, and possible reproductive effects. So, we just want to be careful by, using these things in moderation. We have to do the best we can given the circumstances. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but to the extent that you can use more natural options, I would go for that, like hydrogen peroxide kills COVID-19, just a 3% solution. So if you mix that with some alcohol and some glycerin, you can make your own hand sanitizer. And again, there are some sanitizers you can buy at health food stores as well. So dry cleaning. So this was something that I worked on a few years ago. We actually did a white paper looking into the different types of dry cleaning alternatives because I was getting a lot of questions about this as well. Most dry cleaners use a chemical called PERC or perchloroethylene. And this is a known carcinogen. It's categorized that way by the EPA and several other federal agencies. It can have nervous system effects and cause liver damage. So what's great is that we have these alternatives here on Long Island as well, such as Green Earth, which is a silica-based solution that gets used to clean our clothing. And there's also a process called wet cleaning, which just as it sounds, they put the clothing into a specialized machine with detergent and water. It does use water, but it's safe for your dry clean only clothing. And that's pretty much the greenest option that there is out there. And more dry cleaners are starting to offer this because even for their own health, they're concerned. So a few years ago in Suffolk County, I worked with legislator Kara Hahn, who's the head of the Environment Committee there, and she's a great environmental leader. And we passed a legislation that said when you go into the dry cleaner, they have to have signage on the wall that tells you what solution they're using. Because up until then, you really would walk into a place and not know. So it was like a customer right to know legislation that was passed. So it's really great. So moving on to plastics. This is a big, big issue. We're hearing more and more about plastic in terms of waste, but I also wanted to point out that plastic can have health effects as well. So basically when you look at any sort of plastic container, you'll notice that usually on the bottom inside the recycling symbol, the triangle shaped, little symbol, you'll find a number from 1 to 7. And that tells you what type of plastic it is. So I worked with the Huntington Breast Cancer Action Coalition, and they came up with a little rhyme to help people understand which plastics are safer than others. So if you can remember this, it goes 5, 4, 1, and 2. All the rest are bad for you. So basically, plastic number 1 would be your typical drinking water bottle, like you see in the picture there. Usually 1 and 2 are the ones that get recycled here on Long Island. And plastic number 5 is like your yogurt cups. The less safe plastics we'll talk about here in the next slide. So plastic number 3 is polyvinyl chloride, or PVC. It contains phthalates, those hormone disruptors that we talked about. It's found in plastic wrap like saran wrap and some toys, shower curtains, children's raincoats. So to the best we can to try to just avoid using those things or using, safer alternatives. Plastic number 6, this is a familiar one. It's basically styrofoam. So styrofoam contains nonylphenol and styrene, which are both carcinogens. So why we keep serving, hot liquids and coffee in styrofoam cups is beyond me, except that I can say they probably have a great lobby in Washington, D.C. protecting their interests. So to the extent that we can get styrofoam out of our life, the better. Plastic number 7 is kind of a catch-all for all the other types of plastics. And it's usually polycarbonate, which sometimes can contain that chemical BPA, which you may have also heard about in the paper. It's called bisphenol A. Sometimes now you see products that say BPA free, because we were finding that this BPA was used in baby bottles and drinking cups. It's also in some dental resins, plastic food containers. It's even sometimes in the lining of some cans. And also in thermal paper store receipts, those waxy looking receipts that you get. So thankfully, some breast cancer groups here on Long Island worked with Suffolk County. Again, at that time, it was legislator Steve Stern. And we were able to get it banned now even at the state level. So it's now throughout New York State. We got it banned in baby bottles and drinking cups for kids. So BPA is a hormone disruptor. I should have said that. So some really good stuff coming out of Long Island, I have to say. We're leading the way, getting things to go in the right direction. So a little tip is I always recommend that people don't microwave in any sort of plastic container or leave saran wrap on, touching your food when you microwave, because even when it says microwave safe, what that means is that it won't melt. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to be leaching phthalates or other chemicals from the plastic into the food. So safe for the plastic, maybe not so safe for you. So fire retardants. Again, these chemicals are used even in the realm of food because, for example, there's one of the PFAS chemicals that's polyfluoroalkyl substances. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with chemical names, but there's one called PFOA, which is a carcinogen. It's a liver toxin, and it's been found in the non-stick coating in cookware. So if any of you saw that movie called Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo last year, that was what that movie was about. And it was a really interesting film about the lawyer that was, working to bring this into the public awareness. But also PFOA is found in the lining of microwave popcorn bags. So when you put those bags of popcorn into the microwave, that, greasy, the sort of like waxy coating can contain this chemical. So I always recommend to just make popcorn the old fashioned way in a covered pot, with cooking oil and organic corn kernels. And when we cook, to look for stainless steel cookware or ceramic, glass, things like that. So another question I often get is, should I be drinking bottled water? Is that safer? Well, actually, um, bottled water is kind of controversial because, first of all, when we look at the energy used to fill the water bottles and transport them, refrigerate them, each bottle uses the same amount of energy as it's like the equivalent of filling that bottle a quarter of the way with oil. So we really don't need to be doing that. The water here on Long Island is pre-filtered before it comes to our tap. The water districts here are pretty good, but if you're concerned about anything or if your water just doesn't taste good, what I recommend is using a water filter. Because a good water filter on your tap and even on your shower, I have one on my shower, takes out contaminants such as chlorine, microorganisms, lead, and other chemicals. And when you go to buy a filter, it'll tell you on the box, this filter removes XYZ. So, you can just see whatever is of most concern to you to, figure out which filter is best. And you can even get them for your office, like down on the bottom. It's kind of a blurry picture, but you can get those hot and cold machines with the spigots on them, and they just connect into the plumbing of the building or of your house. So you don't need to have those blue plastic containers, because those are usually plastic number 7, which can contain BPA. So we'll talk about cosmetics and body products. So there are 10,500 personal care products for sale in the United States. Very few of them have been assessed for health and safety by the industry's safety panel. So there's this wonderful organization called Environmental Working Group down in Washington, D.C., and they did a report a few years ago called Skin Deep, and they found that 1/3 of personal care products contain at least one chemical linked to cancer. So there are some ingredients that you can look out for when you look at labels of your body care products. Those phthalates are back again. Phthalates seem to be in quite a few products. Again, they're hormone disruptors, and they cause reproductive birth defects in lab animals, particularly with males. Parabens are another common ingredient. They're used as an antimicrobial preservative, but they're weakly estrogenic. So studies have found that the parabens act in concert with the estrogen in our own bodies, and both men and women have estrogen in our bodies, putting us at potentially a greater risk for breast cancer. When it comes to nail polish, for example, it contains formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, toluene, and phthalates. Like you might see, methyl paraben, different types of phthalates, even if you look at the fine print and the ingredients on these things. And I also want to point out about hair dye, especially black hair dye can actually contain coal tar, which, just as it sounds, it's like the ash from burning coal. And this is also a possible carcinogen. Just happens to make our hair black. So what's great is that there are so many alternatives now. There are many companies coming out with alternatives that are much safer, even nail polish companies that are not using those chemicals I mentioned. You can find some of these alternative companies even at Target, a couple maybe at CVS and those type of places, but mostly at health food stores and certainly online. Just doing a search online, you can find numerous companies with organic ingredients and natural ingredients in their products. So a really helpful tool when it comes to these products, because it can be so overwhelming, is this app that Environmental Working Group created called the Healthy Living app. So you can, just have it right on your phone when you're out shopping for your products. And it's like a database. You can put the name of the product in and it tells you how healthy or, green it is or not. So just to wrap up, I know I hit you with quite a bit of information, but I'm happy to, take questions. But I wanted to just point out that there's quite a few groups working on advocacy on these issues. I'm part of my organization is part of a coalition called the Just Green Partnership, and we work on legislation in Albany. Last year before COVID, we had a lobby day and we're up in Albany lobbying and working on legislation. So there's quite a big movement to try and get things so that we don't all have to be chemists when we go to the store just to buy common products, and things will be safe on the shelf. Oh, and as I mentioned, that's my website, the radio show. It's on WUSB Stony Brook, 6 p.m. on Fridays. So I want to thank the Patchogue-Medford Library for hosting this event on Earth Day. It's a very special day. I hope you learned a lot. And I just leave you with a quote that the earth sustains our lives. So for our own health and for future generations, we must make good choices now. And like Kermie says, it's not so bad being green. That's my contact information, greeninsideandout.org. If anyone wants more information, I have some fact sheets and things there. I guess I will stop sharing. Is that good? Oops, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, how embarrassing. Thanks.
Okay.
As I'm like chatting here. Thank you very much. We did receive a question in the chat box, and
Great.
it's from Katerina. She says hello, and that she uses essential oils on wool dryer balls instead of dryer sheets. But her question is whether there is an essential oil that's less toxic to use.
As far as I'm aware, essential oils are fairly safe. You want to look for a good brand that, that uses all natural ingredients and doesn't have a lot of extra ingredients in the essential oils. But that's a great solution because you can make your laundry smell nice and it doesn't add toxins, because those laundry dryer sheets most likely have phthalates in them. So to the extent you can avoid using them, it's a good idea. Katerina always has great ideas.
Beth, it's me again. It's Katerina, but I do have one more question on the dryer. If you take your clothes to the dryer and, they do in bulk, and you have something that's organic and somebody else has something that's not, mixing up all these things, do they, like you were saying, leach in or leak into your clothing? And are you smelling then the byproducts of other people's clothing? It's a little concerning then,
Yeah, you mean if you go to like a laundromat?
Yeah, not a laundromat, like a dry cleaning, and a dry cleaning place. But your item might be organic cotton or something, but they might put it within a bulk of other things that could mix. But those things are not necessarily organic cotton. Could they leak out chemicals when they're in the heated or in the water, like, and contaminate yours? Just thinking of like the fumes and then leakage. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. I've never thought about that.
Because you think of the
I
hot
would guess
water, the
so.
heat, because
Yeah,
that's something to be kind of cognizant about from a dry cleaner's point of view, if I don't know if they are.
yeah, that's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
I would say again that the best thing we can do when we
Mhm.
choose a dry cleaner is to try to use those ones that are using the wet cleaning,
Uh-huh.
at least so that you're not getting perk onto your clothing, because perk actually off gases. So there's some regulations now across the states, in different states like California, that they can't actually put in a multi-family building, like in a city, you can't put a dry cleaner underneath apartments, because
Okay.
they were finding that the perk was off-gassing into the air, and they were finding it in the apartments above.
Okay.
So that's definitely an issue. But in terms of other chemicals from the laundry, I'm not quite sure. That would be something I'd have to research.
Okay.
You stumped me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like that. But thank you. It was quite informative, like always. And I have to check because we just, I don't know if you heard of Mr. Mosquito. He came to do a spraying of the yard because of the ticks. They're just out of control with the two dogs now. They're all over the place. And it does say that they're green. So I will definitely share that information with you to make sure that they are green.
Sure.
But also the doggies now have collars that they wear for ticks, anti-tick collars. And I'm wondering how healthy those are because they're probably seeping into their system and they're smelling them all day too. So that's
Yeah, that would be something I'd have to look
yeah.
into as well, but I would be
Mm.
careful with anything like that around the pets because I would assume that those are probably pyrethrins or pyrethroids, which are
Okay.
nerve toxins in those
Uh,
dog collars, but that's something I could research. And I'm always
okay.
happy to do that. If anyone wants to send me an email, it's beth@greeninsideandout.org. I research products all the time.
Okay, that's our next mission to make sure the doggies are safe,
Yes,
non-toxic. Thank you, Beth.
sure.
Mhm.
Insideandout.org. I put that in the chat box too.
Yes, greeninsideandout.org. So there's fact sheets on water filters on the website and on eco fashion and recycling and all kinds of different things. Plastics, the types of plastics. We have a wallet card you can actually print out if you want to just bring it with you. And when you're looking at your plastic, anything contained in plastic, you
I
can find
realized
30.
that the yogurts that I buy recently, it's the Activia, they're number 6. And I know that you can recycle like up to a number 5. So when I see the 6, I'm like, oh, I guess it's not recyclable. So I wash it and throw it away. But number
Yep.
6 is no good, huh?
No. And even for example, I've noticed it's not just styrofoam. I should be clear about that too. Plastic number 6, even when you go for sushi and they give you those plastic containers, the clear lid on top is often polystyrene, so it's not recyclable. But funny enough, the bottom part, which is usually a black color, that
Mhm.
is usually plastic number 1 or 5, which depending on your township, it could be is usually recyclable.
Okay.
Beth, nowadays they have those paper boxes
Yep.
that they give you to go. But I noticed like when you were talking about the film that's in the popcorn, it seems
Mhm.
that same type of film
Yeah, it's
is
like
like I don't
waxy.
know, there's a waxy film right in that cardboard paper thing. So I'm wondering how healthy that is too.
Yeah, so that's one of the next issues that we have to take
Mhm.
on. I actually have attended a webinar about this, that some of those paper containers do contain these fire retardants. So there's probably going to be some regulation about that, I'm guessing,
Okay.
coming down the pike, because obviously because of waste issues, we have the Brookhaven landfill closing in a few years. So I'm involved in all sorts of waste issues. And I just got to tour the recycling plant recently. And I'm on the Suffolk County Single-Use Plastics Committee with legislator Kara Hahn. There's just tons of stuff going on about this. So the more we, are pushing restaurants and, food establishments to use these paper containers, it's going to be the next battle, what's in those things, because some of them do have those, fire retardant, even pizza boxes have that chemical.
Wow.
Yep. Some of them do. The ones that you notice are a little waxy. And they do things like this to try to to keep the grease from the food from seeping through it. It has like a practical side to it. It's like even with the fire retardants, originally these things were done to protect us. But then we find out afterwards that what we did to make things better may make things worse in a different way. So it's like a long evolution of awareness.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
What about the safety of silicone, like in kitchen utensils?
I think that's pretty safe. I've never heard anything about that being toxic. I know that it's like a type of plastic, I guess. I wouldn't chew on it, but aside from it leaching anything, I think it's pretty safe.
Okay, good. Does anybody else have any other questions? You can unmute or put them in the chat box. Nothing yet. It was very informative, just like the future of fashion.
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna work on my laundry detergent situation and my dryer sheets.
Yes, and there's some great alternatives there. So, you can go to the health food store, or even Stop and Shop has their own line. Um, I'm blanking out on the name, but it's like kind of their own eco-friendly brand that they have. So it's becoming more widespread.
I just
Great.
bought one from Trader Joe's. They had like a lavender smell to it, which is really pretty.
Yeah, and now I've seen there are these detergent sheets that you can buy. They come in a cardboard box and they just biodegrade, and it's like
Mm,
it's soap that it's like I don't know, it's like a little sheet that you put in the laundry. So it's much more compact and there's no plastic involved in the detergent, bottling, this
mm.
packaging. So that's pretty cool.
Where did you see that, Beth?
It's been all over my Facebook. I think
Oh,
I
okay.
must be a magnet for this type of information.
Okay.
It comes to me.
I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah, but some of my friends said they've tried it and it works fine. They
Okay.
they really like it.
Mm.
I actually use a laundry ball. So it has like these ceramic orbs in it, and it's supposed to change the pH of the water in the laundry, and you
Mhm.
don't need to use any detergent, and you can use it over and over.
Okay.
Is there a brand of one of those that you recommend over another? Because I see a whole bunch of them on Amazon, and I'm like,
No, I think they all work pretty
they
much
do.
the same. Yeah, I mean, I know I was able to get mine for $10 or so, and some of them are 25, and it's probably the same exact thing.
Okay. And you said
I,
they last for like 100 washes?
yeah, yep,
Wow.
yep. Mine is called a greenwash ball.
Okay.
It's not the greatest name. Greenwashing is usually a negative connotation, but yeah, so many
All right.
things that we can do for our own health and for Earth Day to take care of the planet, and just trying to spread the word and
That's
get the
right.
word out. So hopefully everyone here can pass the word along.
Yes.
And
And how could people get involved like legislatively? Like I know you do lobbying and things like that, or like when you get those notices to sign, petitions and things like, do those help make a difference or?
I think it really does. The more that legislators hear from us, the better. In fact, speaking of which, you just reminded me just today, because now, because of Earth Day, there were all sorts of announcements on clean energy. That's a whole other subject on the federal level, even at the state level. New York has quite a bit going on. I work in that area too. Um, Today, I found out that there's new legislation, which I was helping to draft, that finally is a state bill, and it has to do with getting that PFAS, those fire retardants, out of textiles. So it's really exciting. So we'll be putting some information on our Facebook page as to how people can advocate for that. Because apparently I learned we had Earth Day Lobby Day the other day through the Just Green Partnership. There were 10 bills that we were advocating. And I heard that these legislators get thousands of bills, like sometimes 5,000 bills per year. So it really is the ones that they hear the most about that get any movement. So petitions and letters and phone calls really do make a difference. So in terms of being involved, I would definitely encourage people to look up the Just Green Partnership. It's again that coalition that we're part of, and it's with the League of Conservation Voters and Citizens Campaign for the Environment and Clean and Healthy New York and breast cancer groups, and is about, I think, 30, 40 different groups in the coalition. And they have great information about laws that we can be supporting in New York State.
Great.
And there are similar national groups too.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, this presentation has been recorded, so in a few days or so, you can check out our YouTube page and to get all that information again. It was a lot, but it was good. It's good stuff.
I know, I think I just dumped about 15 years of knowledge into your brain. So good job to you guys for listening to me
Yeah.
blather for an hour. But I really hope
It
it
was great.
helps make a difference. there's so many different ways to go green. And like I said, I try to get the word out through our social media and radio show, always giving people ideas of what they can do to be greener. So happy Earth Day,
Great.
everybody.
Happy Earth Day. Any last questions? Final call for questions. Okay. Well, thank you again, Beth, for your time. We love having you.
Sure.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you for
Bye-bye.
joining us, everyone. Be safe and
Thank
happy
you.
Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.